It's time for AggroChat, the official podcast of the Tales of the Agronaut blog and stalwart gaming community, where we talk about stuff and things, and the stuff about the things, and sometimes gaming. I'm Belgast, and let's start the show. Hey folks, it's that time again, time for another episode of AggroChat. This is episode 247. Tonight I'm joined by Ashgar.
Hello.
Grace.
Hello.
Godra.
So are we not doing the funny intros anymore?
I don't know. Y'all did that on your own. That was not me planning anything. Tam.
Hello, what's up?
No more funny intros. Never again.
Yeah, right.
No more being funny.
Seriously.
So,
You can think that if you want to.
Here I am, Kodra is talking, and I'm like, I've got time to take a sip of my nope.
Yeah, so like the funny intro thing, y'all just kind of pull that on me. Like that is not planned with me involved.
Well, I know.
Which I don't think it works.
Not playing with
if
most
I
people
know.
involved.
Yeah, it's not playing with each other
It's-
involved.
It's mostly
Yeah.
Ash feels like saying something.
And then I'm
Yeah.
on the hook next, and I
Ah,
usually
yeah.
can't speak because I'm laughing too hard.
Yeah. Like I think it loses its effect if we do it too often, so
Yeah.
So we have some topics to talk about, and the first one I am going to get out of the way because I think it'll be relatively short. The other two are like more wordy topics, but I have been playing a game that kind of sprung out from nowhere in my feed, and lots of people have been talking about it, kind of like lots of people were talking about Baba Is You. It is a game published by Deep Silver and developed by Nine Dot Studios, I think is the name of the studio. It's called Outward, which is not exactly a great name for a game because it's hard to Google because lots of other things come up.
Yeah, doesn't seem like it would have very good SEO.
So there's a whole series of games that have come out that are basically like nostalgia for the way games used to feel. Namely the Everquest era of games, DOC era, that sort of thing. And like I talked about Project Gorgon like a year ago, maybe. And this is definitely a game that at face value looks like it's part of that genre, with the difference being it's not an MMO. It is a multiplayer capable game, so you can like invite friends to your session if you want, but it is mostly at its core a survival-y game, but also kind of a Dark Souls combat-y game, because combat is, and what I mean by that is like combat is kind of challenging, and you have to like time your hits, and you have stamina to worry about, and all of that stuff. And like I hate to say something is Dark Souls like just because of that, but like I don't know what else to call that style of combat, because like that's a very specific style of combat that I mostly associate with Dark Souls.
Wow, I was looking at the screenshots on their website, and now I'm looking at their trailer, and this game looks so much better in motion than it does in screenshots.
It does, and it also looks better when you're actually playing it. Like, so I do not feel like the screenshots or the trailers necessarily do it justice, because like it's a much cooler game than I was led to believe just by looking at the screenshots and trailers and that sort of stuff. But there were enough people that I had seen talking about it that I was like, oh well, it's like pretty cheap, so I'll try it. And it's really actually kind of fun. But
So I kind of want to interject here. Like, stamina and health and things that use stamina, I feel like Elder Scrolls kind of has a claimant on that, and you have to be a little bit more specific than that to be Dark Souls combat.
Well, okay, so but Elder Scrolls stamina use is way more forgiving than a game like this, because like a heavy swing really drains your stamina. So like you maybe only have 3 heavy swings before you're out of stamina, and you're having to basically like backpedal and wait for it to regen. And that's a sort of gameplay that I mostly associate with Dark Souls, the waiting for stamina to regen.
Oh, I don't know. I feel like you wait quite a while. Like, stamina regen's even slower in Elder Scrolls games, I feel like.
Maybe. The story is also kind of dark. Basically the intro is you were on a merchant vessel and you're trying to go off to foreign lands to trade and bring back wealth to your little town. And something goes wrong and you don't know what goes wrong, or at least I don't know what goes wrong yet. And there's a massive shipwreck. And only a handful of you survive. And not shockingly, you're on an island, which is the tutorial island. But you can get off of the tutorial island almost instantly if you just follow what the only other person on the island tells you to do. You can like get off the island instantly. But there's a lot of things on the island that will help you out in your end goal, because like there's a bunch of stuff that you're ultimately going to need just kind of laying around the island if you go off and explore it. So you get back to town, and the second you leave your house, you are confronted by a mob of angry villagers because you've not paid your blood price. While you were gone, no one was paying your blood price for you. And apparently, generations ago, your ancestor turned away pilgrims from the religious majority in this world, and horrible things beset them, and now you have a blood price on your family's bloodline that has been in place for generations. So it's like you have to pay a tax, and your first mission is you have to somehow make 150 silver in 5 actual in-game days, or they will repo your house.
Well,
and they will straight up repo your house. Like, you no longer have a house.
If you succeed, does Tom Nook build an addition and then your blood price gets higher?
No, like, so I succeeded. Like, weirdly enough, there was enough stuff just laying around town and in the near vicinity of town that if I was being brutal at selling everything, I could make up the money.
By stealing stuff that you find?
By stealing stuff that's on the ground, yes. There is no theft system in this game. Stuff is just laying around everywhere. But, yeah, so, like, it was doable, but at first the other way to get out of your blood price is by doing a favor for one of the other members of this tribe. And they specifically say the word tribe, even though, like, it's just a town. But, so, like, there are various... I've only found one of these. There's, like, a way that you can do something of value for one of these people that will get you out of paying that 150 silver. But, like, that's kind of the first dilemma that you're set up against, and then you're just turned loose in the world. Like, figure it out. There's a robust crafting system. There's there's not really a class-based system, but you can, like, seemingly make builds based on what you decide to train on. I found a place to where basically I could learn magic, but in order to learn magic, I had to sacrifice my health and stamina. And, like, it literally asked you how much health and stamina do you want to permanently sacrifice to turn into mana. So it's like there's a decision. So I went with, like, an even split. So, like, I took a little bit off health and a little bit off stamina so that I could get an equal amount of mana. But, like, you could really drain your health and stamina to become, like, super magical, if that's what you chose. Basically, there's, like, a lot of interesting choices that you're given, and there's been weird stuff that's played out that, like, I did not expect. And you can absolutely lose everything on your character if you're not careful. Because, like, when you die, your backpack will be out in the world somewhere, and you have to get back to your backpack to loot it again. So, like, there's definitely a old school MMO element of, oops, I died. Now I'm going to have to go find some weapons so I can get back to my backpack. And combat is rather challenging. And you encounter all kinds of status debuffs, and fighting hyenas could make you catch a disease. It's got all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And I find it interesting. And I think I don't know if they necessarily intended to be a EverQuest nostalgia game, but it feels very much the way that EverQuest felt when I first played it. And I think it does a better job of that than games that have actually intended to do that.
Yeah, because the problem you run into with that is you want something that feels like how you remember it feeling.
Right.
not how it actually felt.
Right. No, because going back and playing the actual thing is not fun.
Like even EverQuest doesn't have corpse runs anymore. They got rid of them.
What?
Right.
Yep.
I think mostly for technical reasons. Like items were getting too complicated for it to be reasonable.
Well, like every zone pretty much has a graveyard, and after a certain period of time, your corpse will be summoned to the graveyard. And you can just loot it there.
Oh.
But that's really only to get back experience. It's not to get back your items. But anyway, like the main thing that reminds me of EverQuest is it's got a very EverQuest layout where there's a bunch of zones with loose connections between the zones, and each of the zones that I've been in have all been about the same size of an EverQuest zone, like an old school EverQuest zone, and the zone connections don't exactly make sense. Like they're not really. You can't lay the squares out and make a map that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's tons of dungeons everywhere, which is interesting. But yeah, I think it's kind of cool. I think Tam and Thalen would probably dig it. I don't know if you would, Kodra. Ash, you would check the hell out. Figured Grace, you would also check the hell out.
Yes, I definitely
Sounds
would.
like it.
So, I don't even know how to lead into this one because it's rolled over so many times. But Tam, give us an explanation of this next topic. And I know you just gave one a few minutes before we hit record, but my God, you need to do it on the podcast.
Yeah, so we've had a bunch of like on and off show discussions about like games valuing your time, games that feel like they take too much time, sort of games that ask a lot of you in general, but like it's almost always been time focused. Like, oh, this game asks a lot of your time. But there's been a few games that I've been bouncing off of lately where it's not really that they're asking too much of my time. They're just asking too much of my, like, I don't know, brain space. I described it as focus, but it's
attention fatigue.
Yeah, it's too much of my brain that is being consumed by too much bandwidth is being consumed by this game for me to want to play it. And so I've been thinking about games that I can easily play while playing other games versus games where, you know, if somebody says, "Hey, have you played this?" or "Hey, do you want to play this with us?" I have to really think about it because it's like, oh, I've got to go, you know, mentally catch up. And the thing that got me thinking about this was like a month or so ago, we were talking about getting back into an MMO and opening your inventory and then just wanting to log out.
Mm-hmm.
Because like from a time perspective, if I load up an MMO and have to clean out my inventory, from a time perspective, that's not actually that much time. It's like maybe half an hour, but I'm exhausted after that half hour.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what I mean by focus. And like there's a number of games that I had tried to play The Witcher 3, which I like more than I thought I would. I played it more or less entirely on the recommendation of some people who I didn't expect to recommend it. But it demands a lot of my focus. It demands a lot of mental bandwidth from me. And I've been playing a whole ton of Warframe lately, which demands like almost no mental bandwidth from me.
See, so this is interesting because I've kind of talked about this before, but one of the things that Warframe always does is I load up and I'm like, there are so many different things to do. Like, what's the thing I am doing now? What's the thing I'm trying to do? And like, you can say, oh, you can do absolutely anything, but I have to make a choice.
Yeah.
So I have to choose on something, and it's like, there's so much to do that I don't know what is the right choice. What's a good idea for me to be doing? What's a good way for me to progress?
Yeah, and that's why I thought it would be sort of an interesting like topic, because what consumes focus is so different for different people. Because for me, making a choice like that is like, whatever, I'll just pick something and do it. I don't have to. I'm not really worried. I'm not like when like in Warframe, I'm not weighting my choices around what is efficient or what is the best use of my time. It's just like, do I want to do this thing? All right, I'll do this thing.
I think the problem that I have, and I've mentioned this with Warframe, but I don't know if like I've fully explained why, is I've constantly been looking for the patrol mode or the free play. And the reason why is like, that is the thing that I do a lot of times until I remember what the hell I actually wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I'll log into a game and I need there to be some activity that is like neutral state.
Yeah.
Like I can go
something
do
that
this
doesn't
thing.
require you to make to like make decisions, that you can just be like, okay, I jump into this.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Get back
like,
into the flow of things.
And once I've warmed up a little bit and gotten used to the game again, I'll remember, oh, well, last time I played, I really wanted to do this. Let's go do that. So, like, I need something to kind of engage the works and get me back into something. And I've never really found that neutral state activity for Warframe, which is kind of a challenge. And there's other games that I struggle with that, too. Like, I'm okay at playing this game. Like World of Warcraft, for example. Modern implementations of World of Warcraft, neutral state is go do some world quests.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just a neutral state. Okay, well there's activities popped. Let's go knock some of those out, and in the meantime, we'll figure out what we actually wanted to do.
Yeah.
I've also struggled somewhat to get to that neutral state with Final Fantasy XIV because I know for Thalen, your neutral state has become Eureka.
Initially jumping back in, it was Beast Tribe quests and the hunt, because those were things that I could just go do. Like, and I think that's why I had such an easier time getting back into Final Fantasy XIV this time than last time. Which last time I was about level 30 some odd when I quit, and then I came back shortly before Heavensward, and like I ended up making a new character and playing that character up to about level 15 just to remind myself what the hell was going on and how to play this game and everything.
Yeah.
This
that
time,
sounds very familiar.
Yeah. This time I came back and like I hadn't done any Stormblood stuff. I needed to finish Heavensward, but I knew when I came back in, I was like, okay, Beast Tribe quests are a thing that I was working on, and the hunt, and those, like, I know what the benefits of those are. It's just a matter of going, killing stuff, doing some quests. Like, I can get back into the flow with that. And, you know, and that's what happened. And now I've got Eureka on top of that I can just, you know, if I don't have anything else that I need to do, I can go head to Eureka and run around killing things for crystals and know that I am making some progress.
Yeah. And I'm with Belle in that I've never really found a neutral state thing. Like, for me, my neutral state thing was hop in a roulette. But if I can't hop in and immediately start doing it, then I check out pretty fast.
And for me, like, even if a neutral state thing might be to hop in a roulette, when I come back to a game from a long absence, the very last thing that I want to do is interact with other people.
Yeah.
Well, and the challenge for me with that was like, okay, I can DPS in a roulette as a neutral state activity, but I can't tank, like, coming back to a game. And I imagine it's probably feels the same way as healing. Like,
Yep.
That's something that you just can't quite ease back into unless you've got another way of doing it. Like, I would not want to throw myself right into tanking with random people in a brand new dungeon that I've never seen.
That was definitely an issue for me coming back. And I have, for lack of a better term, just let go as far as that one goes. Because, well, I'm the tank, and they can get annoyed at the speed that I tank if they want to. Mostly they won't, because people don't say things in this game a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, it will just go. Yeah, for a long time, only having a tank leveled up and having a dungeon directly in front of me was keeping me from coming back.
Yeah.
I definitely needed to have something that I could do that felt like that I could make some form of progress in, where no other player was depending on my performance. Like, I absolutely had to have that to come back to the game.
Right.
Well, and that's, I mean, so the dungeons are even worse for me because it's like, I need to have something that is shorter than a Final Fantasy XIV dungeon. That's kind of like
Mhm.
why I haven't been able to get back to that anymore, is because it feels like I can't really commit my time like that.
Yeah, and
Like, I can't commit chunks of time like that. Like, there was a thing in Warframe where it was like, you need to do a 60-minute survival, and I did it, but it was like, I had to plan for that because being able to be in a game for 60 minutes uninterrupted at this point, it's kind of hard for me.
Yeah.
I'm glad they said there won't be. They said that was too much.
yeah, and I think I don't know, it's sort of interesting to me that how quickly it tilts back to time.
I feel like it's a multi-scalar problem, though. Like, it's a lot of factors at once.
Well, and I guess another thing that I've been kind of going through is like a lot of these games, when I am playing them, like we kind of broke on this, but when I am playing them, they are the game. They want to be the game you are playing.
Yeah.
They don't want you playing other games.
Yeah, and that's sort of what I was thinking about focus consuming games, where it is like, this is a game that wants to be the game you're playing, and I can slot maybe one of those at any given time. But like, I tried to pick up Xenoblade Chronicles, which I really would like to play, and it seemed interesting, but like, it just wants too much of me.
That game is a pile of systems.
Yeah, and I just don't have the mental bandwidth to hold all of them in my head. Sekiro is kind of getting there for me, where it's like, I haven't played it in like a week and a half just because I haven't had the focus to sit down and do it. It's like, I've had plenty of time, but I don't have the focus to sit down and dive into it. And like, I am Mr. Story Games, and I haven't played in like months now. I haven't played a heavily story focused game.
The thing that I've noticed is, like, a lot of the times I really need my playtime to be broken up in like 15-minute chunks. And like, I may have time to string 3 of those 15-minute chunks together, or I may only have one of them before I need to surrender my attention to something else. Be that an email that just came in that like is of high priority that I need to deal with right then, or something that my wife needs. Like, I need not to be tied up for more than like 15 minutes at a time.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to get back to what Tam was saying. This is why I'm kind of been backing off of Warframe in general, is because I haven't been playing games with stories, and that, like, I have been feeling the lack of playing games with stories. And so I'm trying to get into a game with a story. And unfortunately, I'm kind of not finding many of them coming out right now.
That's what I've been running. I keep finding.
Did you
ones.
play God of War yet?
I have not. That's a good point. I should play God of War.
Yeah, I have like a list of story heavy games I want to play, but every time I sit down with one, I bounce off. I mean, even like Dragalia Lost, I find myself bouncing off of like their events because I have to sit through a bunch of like, charming and enjoyable, but just too much focus for me.
No, I skip the shit out of those dialogues.
Aww.
Like, I do not have the patience to sit through them. I'm sorry.
They're the thing that makes me like that game more than a lot of other games, because there's like a coherent story there, semi-coherent, mostly coherent,
kind of coherent.
There's a story.
Yeah, and they put a lot of time into it.
My interaction with Dragalia Lost is pretty much doing the daily whatevers every night before I go to bed, and I don't really get much more in other than that.
Yeah, I made a joke, like half joke a couple of podcasts ago, but like, I really do want a game that has a beginning and an end, and like, I don't even care if it's a massive game like Persona 5. That's the kind, like, I've been craving playing a game like that.
Yeah, I want a game that I don't know what kind of game I want, and I'm noticing that I'm reading more books. Like, I've been reading a bunch of. I was like frustrated that I couldn't sit down into a story game, and I've read like 6 books in the last month and a half. It's Like that's where I'm getting my stories at this point, which is fine. But I know how much I normally get into stories in games, and it frustrates me to just not have the focus to dive into something.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird. We're in this stage where like games are just not story-driven games at all, or they're like a Kingdom Hearts 3, which is like a massive epic that like requires all your attention just to pay like any semblance of mind to how the story's going.
I kind of want a good story. I don't know.
Shots fired.
So I have not played Kingdom Hearts series. I have never heard. I've heard people say it's a very interesting story. I haven't heard really people say it's a great story.
I like those games, but I'm not going to tell you it's a great story.
Yeah, it's for the first game, it's a relatively reasonable story, and it's entertaining. After that point, it goes completely off the rails.
I also
like this is not the sense of Japanese storytelling, Act 4 or whatever. No, the game just goes off the rails.
I mean, I feel like it's the Wheel of Time of video games.
That's a pretty good parallel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Except...
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I have a different thought.
I was going to say slightly less painful to actually go through than Wheel of Time, but you know.
One of the things that I noticed as I was sort of like leafing through some is a lot of games are trying to be like, even games that are single player are trying to be like, this is a world that we're in, like letting you explore, and you will forge your own story through all of these other stories that we're putting out here. And it's like, yeah, but you really aren't telling a really cohesive story then. Like, I'm wondering if the lack of linearity in a lot of these game stories is also frustrating me here.
I mean, I don't know, like in playing Assassin's Creed Origin, it very much was a single-player MMO. Like, the kinds of quests I was doing were MMO quests. Like, they were just taken from any MMO you've ever played. They were fetch, or they were go kill somebody, or they were, you know, go find an item.
I have no time for that in a single-player game. Like, I do not want to do that in single-player games anymore.
I don't really want to do that in MMOs.
Yeah.
See, I actually kind of like that because it's that bite-sized interaction.
Yeah.
Like, I can go do this one quest, and it's probably going to take me about 15 minutes to finish it.
Right.
So, like, it's that bite-sized interaction. However, I feel like the overarching story suffers because the story quests feel not that different from the busy work quests. Like, they maybe have some more cutscenes, but, like, that's about it. It's still an MMO-style quest. And I think that's, like, another thing that I've noticed with a lot of the single-player games that I've played more recently, especially the open-world ones, is they feel so dense, but shallow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of the reasons why I never picked up Red Dead Redemption 2, because I like to learn new things and new systems, but I like to feel like it's meaningful and not a one-off. And spending so much time learning these like intricate RDR systems about like making sure that my horse's saddle is properly polished or whatever, like I'd rather do something else. Like I'd rather do something that's more lasting if I'm gonna spend a bunch of time learning a thing.
But I think that's the challenge of what they're doing, is they want you to spend more time and they want you to make it a permanent thing so that you'll return when they release like marginal content update number 3 and marginal content update number 4.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and that's gotta be that. If they're gonna do that, they can totally do that. Games have totally done that, but they need to make a world that I want to inhabit. And maybe that's been the thing, is like I don't really feel like running around ancient Greece. I don't really feel like running around the end of the Wild West. I don't really feel like running around like mountains in Montana, burned out DC.
See, this is kind of getting to another thing that I've been thinking about it for a while, but one of the things that these games used to provide you with was like they were a social space. They were a place for you to play have a social community happen. I actually think like Warframe with its general chats prominently featured in your spaceship and its emphasis on trying to interact with other players to trade goods is probably better at encouraging player interaction beyond just, hey, these are 3 other people who are on this mission that are going to kill things with me.
Yeah, but the thing is like if you read any of the player polls, they don't want to interact with other players, and the number one reason is because of the general toxicity that they've experienced in other games. So like it's a catch-22. Like I think people crave that, but they don't necessarily know how to get it anymore without being afraid of, you know, Captain Teabagger coming along and doing horrible things to them.
Yeah, because I don't really love jumping into random dungeons in MMOs, not because I necessarily like dislike meeting new people, but because I'm not actually meeting new people. I'm inhabiting the same space as some people, and the only time that there's any interaction is if it goes wrong and someone gets mad.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like only a negative feedback loop, not a positive one.
Yeah, a good dungeon run is one where nobody says anything, everybody does their job, and then you all go your separate ways. Like that's the best scenario.
And like at that point,
just not, you know.
At that point, I'd rather just have 3 bots, or
Like-
be able to solo it.
There's a reason I've been running a lot more lower level dungeons in Final Fantasy XIV recently, because I can bring 3 NPCs with me. It's pretty great.
I think this is sort of getting to a problem. Why I don't know exactly why I'm no longer satisfied with these types of games. It could be because like something about me has changed, but I do think before I was able to feel that my time was worth it because I was furthering a social goal. Like, especially early on, anything I was doing, I was meeting new people and I was interacting with them and like, hey, maybe I'm going to make some new friends here.
Yeah,
I
like
feel like that hasn't been the case for an incredibly long time, though.
It hasn't.
it hasn't.
Yeah, so like I was
You can
watching
choose to blame Xbox Live or Facebook or WoW.
I was watching a thing where a YouTuber was just coming back to WoW and was trying to like be more positive and was having to run a bunch of heroics. And like I almost always say hi or hey folks or something like that at the beginning of runs, and like it's something that carried over from Final Fantasy XIV, because you'll actually occasionally get responses, but like they were doing that in WoW, and like they showed example after example after example, and there were basically one of 2 things happened: either crickets or them being told to shut the F up, and oftentimes have some homophobic slur immediately thereafter. So like if that's what the experience is like either getting ignored or getting cussed at, I mean,
Why bother?
Like why not just solo everything? And the problem is like sometimes there are negative ramifications of just solo everything. Like Anthem, you end up literally half the level that you should be at a given point just by soloing all the quests, because that stupid alliance bonus is worth a lot of points.
Yeah, I think we figured out at a design level, we figured out how to mechanically incentivize players to get to play together, but not how to incentivize players to be
Want to.
Yeah, it's you group with other players because you either have to or because it's more efficient.
Yep.
But not because it's a better experience.
Because mostly it's not.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like if you know just allow the toxic members of a group to run around and be toxic, like they'll take over, and the people that don't want to deal with that will leave, and your community will die.
But like,
Yeah.
Who could have guessed?
So is heavy community moderation an answer? Is it a viable answer?
Frame would like to believe it is an answer, but no.
I think it's a problem nobody's quite solved yet. It's the same problem that plagues all of social media. Like there is no great automated way of effectively moderating stuff like that yet. Nobody has the resources to pour physical bodies into checking for that stuff all the time. So it ends up just like it's an unscalable solution. So back in the days when we had like Everquest, which was relatively small compared to any modern games, like at peak it was probably about 100,000 players, something like that. That's probably manageable at that level. Like there's a certain number of CSRs that you can throw at that problem. But when you have like 12 million players, there's no amount of CSRs you can throw at that problem. Like it's just not a doable thing unless you're just going to have call centers full of people that do nothing but moderate chat logs. So I don't know if there's a great solution because the AI options don't seem to actually help at all.
Yeah, I sort of wonder.
In fact, they tend to hurt,
make it worse.
Because
Yeah,
they're usually the good people just try to use them to the way they're supposed to, and the toxic people look for ways to abuse them, and they always find one.
I'm curious how things have gone for like Riot. I haven't played League of Legends in ages. But when I stopped playing, they were definitely making an effort to try and moderate and improve the community experience. Like they were pouring resources into it. I don't know how many people actually still play League of Legends though, and I don't know how that game's community is.
I don't know. I know people still dread solo queue, but that may just be for other reasons.
Yeah, it sort of makes you wonder, like, what if you had auto moderation at the level of like Club Penguin?
I don't know what Club Penguin is.
It's a basically an MMO for kids aged 6 to 14.
Run by Disney.
Run by Disney.
No, I think it
was
recently,
I think it,
yeah.
I think it had ended, but like it has famously draconian moderation.
Well, at that point, it would need to.
It absolutely
Yep.
needed to. It was absolutely required, and like it was, I mean, tremendously draconian. But as far as I know, it didn't have a toxic player base because it was like borderline impossible to be toxic.
Right. But I mean, I've noticed that like as Final Fantasy XIV has gotten bigger, more and more negative aspects have made their way into the community.
Yeah, I kind of wonder, like, what if you had? I mean, admittedly, I think that there's decent proof that in like Dragalia Lost that even if the only way you can communicate with people is by pre-written, emotes, it's still possible to be toxic at people.
Yep.
No way.
Yep. Yeah, people will figure out a way.
Okay, so the funny thing about that is like that was even part of the metagame of the Mythic Invitational.
Oh yeah.
Of spamming emotes.
There was some BM emotes going on.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you've got multiple problems, all showing up at once simultaneously as the game gets bigger. You've got the problem that as the community gets larger, it's easier for someone to be toxic, and what's the likelihood that there's ever going to be any repercussion that they were an asshole to these 3 people in a dungeon? They're probably never even going to see them again. And if they do, what are those people going to do to them?
Well, I know that's the big thing that changed in MMOs is the whole fact that there was such a thing as a server reputation, and that mattered, and you got blacklisted by groups for being an asshole.
Man, what if you had? This sounds insane even as I think it, but what if you had Reddit style up and down voting?
Oh my goodness.
The toxic
it would be
players
abused.
I mean, it would definitely be abused. Yeah,
that's what would happen.
You would need to
just like they use it on
find
Reddit.
somebody. Well, sure.
And problem number 2 that you run into is pretty much all of the methods that you have to deal with toxic players require you to basically require effort on your part, and in a lot of cases require you to forego your game experience. Okay, I run into a toxic dude in a dungeon. Well, what are my options? I could try vote kick him, and okay.
Then have to wait to fill that best case. You
best
kick them,
case,
and then you have to wait.
yeah, more likely case, the vote fails, and then they get even more toxic because they know they're getting on my nerves and that they can get away with it. At which point,
Yeah.
I have to abandon and take the ding for abandoning. Like, basically at that point, well, I guess I'm just not doing a dungeon today.
I mean, I think it's telling that like some of the best group experiences that I've had are in games that have no communication method.
Yep, because if the non-toxic players aren't trying to communicate anyway, like they're not really interested in doing that. They want to do their job and get their loots and go on. Maybe that's the solution.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But at that point, why do you have a multiplayer game?
True. Answer, so that I can play with my actual friends when the opportunity arises.
Well, and that was sort of what I was thinking, and my takeaway was like, what if you had, what if games pulled in your Discord server membership and you played only with people on your Discord, on your chosen Discord server or chosen Discord servers.
That would be amazing.
Like,
you basically got a view of the world that is only people you know.
You basically just say, hey, it turns out that being exposed to the entirety of the internet is not a thing that is beneficial to anybody in games. So
anybody in anything.
You join your Steam groups or your Xbox Live groups, or your PlayStation groups, or whatever. And those are the only people, and you can set yourself to I only see people in those.
That's
groups.
more or less how Monster Hunter World on PC works.
I mean,
to some extent.
Basically, say offload community organization and all of that on someone that wants to specifically do that thing.
This is really fascinating because
it works for something awful. Say what you will about their community, they have the community that they want to have, and.
Also, their community is super heavily moderated.
Yep.
Well, but this is actually a really fascinating discussion because then you suddenly shrink down your population size to something that can be managed. Like if somebody's a dick to you and you're in a Discord with them, you can call them out and say, hey, this person's being a dick.
Yep.
But also it really limits the pool of people you have to do stuff with. So if I'm up in the middle of the night and no one else is around, I'm just gonna have to play alone, and that's not great.
Like, I think a hybrid solution is a better option to where, like, there are pools, like, so say your overworld play is just limited to people that you actually know. And then
for me, it would be mostly empty all the time.
And so, like, if you want to queue for something, then you can say, okay, well, I'm gonna expose myself to the rest of the world to get a group.
I mean, for someone like me, because I like to be in turtle mode, and I very, very studiously curate all of my friends lists to where there's maybe like 5 people on most of them, that it's not any better than just playing a single player game. Which, I mean, is something that I like to do, but it's not what I want for a game where, running dungeons and having group content is a major portion of the game.
Yeah, whereas I'd either like a multiplayer game in which I can actually, if I'm gonna play with random people in a multiplayer game, I would like that to be an experience in which I could meet and meaningfully communicate with them, or I'd just like to play it by myself. I don't feel like I get a lot out of having a few warm bodies of people. Other than like occasionally, I think somebody has like a funny name that gives me a laugh, but like, I don't know. I don't feel like I get a lot out of just the virtual presence of some people that I don't know and won't communicate with. Because I love to play stuff with people I actually know.
Yeah, but that whole thing is getting harder and harder to actually engineer playing with people. Yep. At least for me.
Just more and more demands on your time makes it harder and harder to carve out sections.
And my time schedule is shifted weirdly from like everyone else's, because like a lot of times I am on my way to bed by 9 Central-ish.
Yep.
And y'all aren't even on yet, so...
Yeah, I'm the only person who's like around, and also my time has shifted, whereas I'm going to bed about the same actual time that you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. whereas I'm getting home slightly later than I previously would have.
Yeah, and then
Time zones suck.
only ever on a weekday or on, after 8 p.m. Central, so there's not a lot of overlap there.
Yup. Yeah, I get on around 8 p.m. Pacific, probably for similar reasons.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, like it's gotten really awkward to try and get any number of us on it at the same time, which harms like the experience, in which it probably makes it feel all the more isolating when we play games.
Other than
Yeah.
right now when we
Yeah.
podcast.
On a weekend.
That's true.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, I think another thing is any game where I could be like, well, I'll just play it on the weekend when my friends are able to play with me, then I have to do all of the work it takes to be able to play that game with those friends.
Right, to play catch up.
Mhm.
So during the week, I have to do misery work on my own to make sure that I am ready to play on the weekends with my friends.
Leveling systems are dumb. It's my soapbox.
Yep.
And I also feel like this is just the dilemma of getting older in video games and having more responsibilities.
I think specifically having more responsibilities, yeah.
Yeah. Because admittedly, like, there are times where even if the fates aligned and we could all be on at the same time, there are just some evenings that I just cannot handle being around human beings after whatever happened at work. Because being responsible now for 14 human beings just drains me at times. Because it's like a different kind of responsibility than the guild leading or raid leading days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, admittedly, like guild raiding or guild and raid leading were good primers for it, but like, no, it's a totally different level.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when it's been like a week that you had to deal with something with human resources and...
Yeah, and like I know for myself, I do a lot of schedule contortions just to make sure that I'm around when other people can make it. Like when other people are around, like I do all kinds of scheduling contortions just to make sure I'm available. But like it's sort of the same idea, but from a different angle, where I'm like preemptively giving up a bunch of stuff in the hope that there's going to be an opportunity to play, but there isn't always. Or I'll play something that I'm not necessarily super excited to play just because it's what everyone around me is playing.
Yeah.
Okay, Kodra. This next little bit that's loosely connected to what we've been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
How did this start, other than that video?
So mostly it's kind of the video, but it's also just the fact that I've been playing a lot of Warframe and really not feeling like I was doing a good job while playing Warframe. Like I didn't feel good about my time spent there. And when I watched this video, which is Fortnite and Manufactured Discontent, it sort of talks about the various ways that Fortnite uses to make you dissatisfied with your play experience. Yeah, you're dissatisfied with your play experience, and so it convinces you to spend money. And I was definitely feeling that as I'm playing Warframe, because when you're playing Warframe without boosters, when you're playing Warframe for free, it just sort of like everything feels so slow. Everything feels like it takes too many runs to get to what you need it to do. And then when you finally get to the point where you're playing with boosters on, everything feels right. And like that was the moment where I was like, Warframe is a game that is balanced around being boosted.
I mean, a lot of them are. Like, that was definitely the case with Rift when they really started to ratchet down the experience gain.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like, if I'm playing without boosters or if I'm playing without the subscription, this is pure misery. This is designed to make me feel awful so that I go ahead and spend some money.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of an interesting evolution to me, because
it feels like to me the evolution of Rested XP.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it feels to me like not that long ago, like 10 years ago, what would have been this would be a subscription, and you would pay your subscription or you wouldn't play.
Mm.
And that was your choice. There wasn't a like an option to play, there would be no, you either pay your dues or you don't play.
Yep.
And the advent of free-to-play games has created that thing where it's like you can play, but the experience is designed for these things that you get if you do pay.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like it's balanced in a weird way. Like, to me, if I were building a you should give me some money system, then I would incentivize it to where, man, it's really cool if you give me some money. Whereas now it feels like you're just kind of getting beat down if you didn't give them some money. So it's like, no carrot, all stick.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's like Ash said. It does feel a lot like the rest of the XP system, which had that same problem. That, when they made it a penalty when you had played too long, everybody hated it. And then they did the exact same thing, but it was a bonus when you were arrested. Suddenly it's okay. So there's that too. But admittedly, like the balancing of it,
it's really just
so it feels awful.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just two sides of the same coin, really. Like, this is one of these is, it's just different. I mean, essentially different marketing for the same overall effect. But there's this definite desire for optimization that's sort of throughout games as a whole, where if you're playing and it could be better and you're not doing it, you feel like you're doing it wrong.
Well, I mean, to some extent, it's the same thing behind the tiered releases of games. Like, if you don't have that double, triple platinum version, then what are you missing by not having bought the most expensive copy of the game?
And I think it all goes back to, how it costs, games have to make money somewhere. The cost of games is going up and the amount that people feel like they're willing to pay for games is going down. So there's some kind of middle ground there, but, if people are like, this game isn't worth paying $60 for, and your game your game, based on the development costs, really should have been $80, then there's a big problem. And I think that's been a thing for a while, but it's also made it's created a situation in which games are trying to figure out how do we actually recoup our development costs, and how do we actually make making games functional as a sustainable thing when people won't play our game if they have to pay money for it. And so it's like, well, we made paying money optional, but really, to have a good experience, it's like technically you can play for free, but you don't actually really want to do that thing.
But I think the big problem that's happened recently is those mechanics are now sneaking into full release price games.
Yeah.
And that feels extra bad.
Well, and I think that full release price game is part of the problem, because full release price games, if by that you mean $60, is not recouping the cost of making those games.
Right, but in those games you also so if you pay for the $150 version of the game,
yeah,
it's not getting you over having to have these other things, other monetization schemes in it as well.
Yeah.
There's no pass that you can buy that's I don't want to look at this anymore. Just give it all to me. Give me all the things that you're withholding from me.
Yeah. How much do I have to pay you up front to not have to ever worry about it? I really wonder, because there was the thing there was a thing for MMOs for a while where the lifetime pass thing.
Mm-hmm.
And by and large, if there was an MMO that offered a lifetime subscription, you probably didn't want it.
Yeah.
If we're totally honest, you probably didn't want it because because it was viewed as a, whether or not this is true, it was viewed as a cash grab. It was hey, we don't actually think you're going to subscribe to this game long term, so you can have a quote unquote lifetime, but you mostly don't care. And there are games where I feel like if you were really into Lord of the Rings Online and you got in that limited window where they had lifetime subscriptions,
oh, it was so worth it.
It was. That game is still, as far as I know, is still going on.
I paid $200 to play Lord of the Rings on the front end, and I played pretty solidly through most of the second expansion. So I definitely got more than it cost less than it would have if I had been subscribing.
I also feel like Secret World's lifetime was well worth the money, even though they transitioned to like a new free-to-play system. But like in doing so, I got tons of stuff. Like I will never need to pay for that game because I just have like a massive backlog of stuff that they gave me when they transitioned my lifetime over.
Of course, you do have to know that you're going to be, that you are going to be playing that game long enough for it to be worth it. Like,
Yeah.
I got a lifetime subscription to Champions Online, and that was not worth it at all.
Yeah.
Made me sad.
I also got the Champions Online lifetime, and that was the only one that wasn't really worth it for me.
But I wonder what the like business takeaways on that were, because like you don't see it.
They're
like
gone
Fortnite,
now. So
yeah, they're gone now, which suggests that they weren't great. And like
the only time you see it now is in a situation where, oh no, this studio is going out of business. They're trying to cash in.
Yeah.
Are you saying Daybreak's games offer lifetimes now?
There was a recent lifetime scheme, yeah. I mean, I'm actually less concerned about Daybreak than I am Gamigo or whatever, whoever bought Rift.
Oh, yeah.
So there's something going on with like these type of games in the PC gaming space especially, and I feel like they've learned some lessons from mobile games, but they haven't learned all the right lessons, because there's a lot of mobile games that have struck a balance that feels fair. Namely, I think Dragalia Lost is pretty fair, and you don't necessarily have to spend any money. In fact, they make it difficult to spend money in that game. But that's Nintendo. But like, if you just play that game, you can do summons at a fairly reasonable clip.
Mm-hmm.
I also feel like Final Fantasy Record Keeper is the same way, that like you can do summons pretty regularly in that game just by spending mithril, because you'll end up with like a surplus of mithril.
Yeah. I mean, the standout for me, and it's not a mobile game, and it's sadly not around anymore, but was Marvel Heroes Online.
Yeah, that was great.
And it was obviously doing well enough for them that they were doing more stuff. The only reason that game shut down is because
lost the license.
Because Disney decided that they didn't want to do
Disney
that.
Decided that
anymore.
It wasn't okay for video games to have the X-Men in them.
Pretty much.
See, now here's an interesting going back to where Kodra started the line of thought. Like Dragalia Lost has like their daily login
drives you to go into the store every day.
Well, it drives you to go into the store every day, but also like everything I get from the daily login, minus like I think one thing per block of time, feels useful. Whereas flatly out of days and days of logging into Warframe,
Warframe's daily login is complete crap.
Yeah, Warframe's login is like
you get a useful thing every 100 days roughly.
Yeah. And like, what if they gave you a booster every so often?
They can, but it's very short.
There's like a couple hours.
Yeah. But like, what if they had, like Belle was saying, what if they adopted that model and you actually had Kodra could log in and say, hey, I want to play with my friends. I want an affinity booster. I'm going to get an affinity booster, and we'll use it. Like I can play the game and it will feel good.
Yeah, I mean, and that was the problem with both ESO and Rift's daily login bonus, is once a month you got something useful.
Mm-hmm. Mostly you got a lot of stuff that just took up space.
Right, clogged your inventory.
ESO is also a game where you can play it without a subscription. The thing they give you is just so useful that I wouldn't want to.
Right, yeah, I would not want to play ESO without a subscription. I mean, I also don't play SWTOR without a subscription either, because I feel like SWTOR went like in a weird direction of applying stick that didn't need to be applied to not being a subscriber.
Yeah.
I feel like they had a confused transition, let's say.
But what's weird about it too is like, when a game is generous, you feel completely different about giving them money.
That is definitely true. Like, I am willing to give some money to Dragalia every once in a while because I feel like I'm getting something worthwhile out of the game no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's more like you're tipping the game. Like, I like this game. I want to give it money so that it continues to keep running so I can keep playing it.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, I never felt like I had to spend money on Marvel Heroes Online. And yet, over the course of playing that game, I probably spent a couple $100, mostly on costumes.
Yeah, like, I bought costume packs whenever they would, like, do the special edition bundles that they came out with. And
yeah, the buy one, get a random one free.
Yeah.
You know, things like that. Like when the Beta Ray Bill costume became available, I absolutely bought that.
Hells yeah.
Because Bill is the greatest.
I actually pulled a Beta Ray Bill from the random costume thing.
Oh man. But yeah, and I never felt like, and I was perfectly happy to give them that money because they had made a good game that I could play, and you know, I didn't feel like they were holding my gameplay hostage. You know, I felt like they deserved it, basically.
So here's my thing with games as a service in general, is if you are going to do that, you got to be on point with your releases. Like, you really have to be on point with the kinds of releases that you're doing. And I feel like Dragalia Lost, again, is the perfect example of how that model needs to work. Like, only 3 to 4 days between events that are going on. They're all, like, if you want me to be logging in and interacting with your game on a regular basis, you need to be constantly giving me something new to do. Like, it could just be revisiting content that I haven't seen in 6 months, but you need to be constantly giving me something new to do.
But I would add a caveat to that, which is that if I happen to miss one of the events, I don't want to feel like I am so far behind that I am now never going to catch up.
Yeah.
And I've played, you know, especially mobile games that were very much like that, where, like with Dragalia, if you miss an event, you might miss, you know, a cool character, but they'll still be in the rotation in the store, and you might miss like a chance to get an upgrade item or something, but none of it is like game changing.
Well, and they've only had like one set of items that were like really grossly powerful, and they've never done that again. And I think that was from that very first event where you get like the candy cane lance or the...
It was the first Halloween lance, I think.
Yeah,
That
like
spear, yeah.
That thing is stupidly powerful, but like they've never done that again. Like they realized, oh, that was a bad idea. But again, like I feel like there's a lot of lessons that these companies that are striving to make games as a service games need to learn from the mobile space. Because like there are certain games in the mobile space that have this on lockdown. Like they understand how to build a thing that keeps you flipping on your phone on a regular basis and engaging in content.
I want fewer I want fewer game genre stigmas within the development industry. Like, Anthem needs to admit that it's like Destiny.
Yeah.
Destiny needs to admit that it's an MMO. All of these free-to-play games need to admit that mobile games are doing it better and they need to learn from them. Like, you cannot be too proud to learn from people who know what they're doing. I mean, Final Fantasy XIV is a great example of this, because 1.0 was aggressive.
We haven't learned anything about the games that came out between FF11 and this game.
Yeah, aggressively so. And FF and ARR was, okay, we learned. And they've since, like, honestly, in some respects, they have learned and taken those lessons further than who they learned it from.
Mm-hmm.
And I think another aspect of this is, like, game companies need to realize that if you are making an FPS, you're not just competing with other FPSs. You're competing with literally everything that pulls eyeballs away from your game.
Yeah.
It could be a mobile game, it could be a Switch game, it could be anything. Netflix, yeah, like it could be...
I mean, that was in Netflix's financial statement, right? Not just competing with other streaming channels, we're competing with Fortnite.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, so like, you're competing, the broadening of the base has also knocked down a lot of the niches. Like, there are not people that are religiously affiliated with MMOs the way that they used to be, or FPSs, or MOBAs, or they're just games, and like, people play the game that they want to play at a given time. So
yeah, there's enough... Players have gotten players have gotten more skilled in the last 20 years by leaps and bounds, and the barriers between different genres have gone down in that same time. So somebody who might have once only ever played Tetris now has the skills to be able to access other types of games. It isn't like, oh, I only play turn-based RPGs because that's all I do, like it might have once been. But now it's like, oh no, I play Monster Hunter, and I play Fortnite, and I play, God of War, and I play Warframe, and I play Persona 5, all of these dramatically different games, but people have it isn't just hyper enthusiasts who play this wide variety of games.
And because of that, you need to steal the best features of everything. You need to look for the thing that each of these genres is doing really well. And if you're wanting to do something similar in your game, incorporate the best features. Don't just try and build a game that only competes with what you consider your genre is.
Yeah, because genre is not really meaningful anymore. I think that's why accessibility and making sure that as many different people can play your game as possible is the right answer.
And I think that shows in the games that are massively popular also don't necessarily care that much about the most hardcore of hardcore players. They're just trying to produce a fun game that's universally fun.
Yeah.
And I'm just hoping within the next couple weeks Anthem figures out loot.
I mean, feels like they tried to learn from Destiny and instead came up with something that looks superficially similar but is actually Diablo.
Yeah, it's very Diablo, minus the
Pay
generosity.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
They didn't design what they thought they did.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
but that's probably not a problem unique to them.
Well, neither did Destiny at first.
Or Diablo.
Or that, yes. It took them a year and a half to figure that one out.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a long tradition of these games having a moment that magically makes everything better.
Experiments are really hard. If you're making a game, I mean, it's like the Fallout 76 thing. People are mad about Fallout 76, and I get it, but wow, is that a crazy experiment that it's a wonder that it ever released. But experiments are hard, and they're probably going to fail.
I finally realized why I struggle at Fallout 76, because there's one thing that I do in every single one of the Bethesda games.
You turn off the inventory.
I mercilessly cheat away encumbrance and inventory, and I cannot do that in Fallout 76.
Oh,
Yeah.
So yeah, that would make sense.
So
Encumbrance?
I am playing the inventory game, that thing I hate doing in games.
Yeah. For games like that, where I can pick up basically anything, I love the inventory system because it means that I don't feel like I have to obsessively pick up every single thing. It doesn't, but I don't get
But I want to pick up every single thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh,
Leaving
God,
loot on the ground is failure.
Right. Yeah, no, it gives me anxiety to have to worry about did I pick up every little thing in this house? Did I do it? Did I miss something? Is somebody going to be like, "Oh, you didn't pick up the cup that's hiding under the table that was broken"? No.
Did you get all the cheese?
Yeah. Did you get every cheese? No. I just pick up the stuff that I care about. I don't have to obsessively go through the whole thing. Now, granted, it means that if you want to do that, there doesn't seem to be an option for that. But
yeah, but the problem is okay. So the side effect of that is Fallout 76 and Fallout 4 were both games where literally picking up everything was useful. Because it could be broken down into crafting materials. So me not picking up that cup or that clipboard or that fan, God forbid not picking up all the fans, meant I was missing parts.
yeah, I mean, in both of those games, I tended to reach a point where I had enough of whatever. I have enough wood. I don't need to pick up more wood.
I never have enough screws.
I mean, yes, there's definitely things. There are definitely things that I just never have enough of, and I need to go find. And they become my oh hey, I know that there's screws here. I'm gonna go farm screws or plastic or whatever. But yeah, there's definitely. I don't know how you strike a middle ground there in a multiplayer game. And maybe that's one of those things that functionally it means that Fallout as a multiplayer game doesn't work. But
I'm honestly like wondering how long the games as a service fad lasts.
Until people find a better way of...
Until the next thing comes around.
Yeah, I mean, it's like loot boxes. Loot boxes have been a thing for a while, and people are starting to get tremendously tired of them, and another solution is... Some other monetization solution is going to happen.
I'm also wondering what the games as a service hook for Borderlands 3 is going to be.
Yeah, well, I mean, it probably is going to be a games as a service.
Yeah, like, I sincerely doubt it won't be.
The game just needs to nail its writing. Please nail the writing. And so far, games as a service has proved to not nail the writing. Anthem does the better job than most.
At this point, we've gone a little over. Do we have anything else to discuss on this topic?
I don't think so.
Well, hopefully you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again next week. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
See ya.